There's a dinner you've been to, maybe more than once. Everyone orders something they didn't really want. Nobody talks about prices. The bill comes, and for about 30 seconds, the whole table pretends money doesn't exist. Someone puts their card down first. Someone else insists on splitting it. Nobody admits they just spent $200 on a night that didn't move them at all. You've been there. So has almost everyone you know. And here's what nobody mentions afterward. 39% of Americans have spent money they couldn't afford. Not on emergencies, not on rent, not on anything that builds, but specifically to impress someone else. That's from a LendingTree study. Nearly 4 in 10 people. And among people under 40, the number jumps past 50%. Half. Not half of reckless people. Not half of people who don't understand money. Half of ordinary, functioning adults who just never stopped long enough to ask one simple question. Who exactly am I doing this for? That question sounds easy. It isn't. Because spending to impress doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with a warning label or a clear moment where you think, I am about to make a decision for an audience that doesn't know they're watching. It arrives quietly, dressed as something else entirely. The dinner was a special occasion. The jacket was on sale. The apartment is in a better neighborhood. And that's just practical, right? The car is reliable. The watch holds its value. The upgrade was only $50 more, and you've had a long week, and you deserve it. That's how the trap works. Not in one dramatic decision, in dozens of reasonable ones, each individually defensible, until the entire structure of your life is quietly built around maintaining a version of yourself that requires constant financial maintenance to keep standing. And the people you're maintaining it for, they're doing the same thing, for a different audience. That probably includes you. There's a term psychologists use for this. They call it status consumption. Spending driven not by what something does for you, but by what it signals to others. And what decades of research have confirmed is that the signal almost never lands the way the spender imagines it will. Researchers at San Francisco State University found something worth sitting with. When people buy experiences specifically to impress others, vacations, dinners, events, the happiness they would have received from that experience disappears entirely. Gone. Not reduced. Eliminated. The motivation rewires the outcome. You are no longer living the experience. You are performing it. And performance is exhausting in a way that enjoyment never is. You've felt this. You know the difference between a dinner where you were actually present and a dinner where you were quietly monitoring how it was landing. You know the difference between a purchase that genuinely made your life better and a purchase that was really just a statement you wanted to make. The statement costs the same money. It returns almost nothing, and yet it keeps happening. Because the mechanism isn't logical. It never was. Here's what's actually driving it. When researchers look at why people overspend to impress, the top answer isn't vanity. It isn't even peer pressure in the obvious sense. The top answer is this. They wanted to feel successful, not look successful. Feel it, which means the spending isn't really about the other people at all. It's about a story you're trying to tell yourself using external props, because somewhere underneath the confidence and the composed exterior, there's a version of you that isn't entirely sure yet. That still needs the confirmation. That still watches the room to see if the room approves. That's not a character flaw. That's just how most people are wired, especially early in their financial lives, especially in a world where status has become visible in real time, on every screen, all day. Social media didn't create insecurity. It industrialized it. It turned the occasional comparison into a continuous feed of curated evidence that everyone else is further ahead, living better, spending more confidently, and so the spending accelerates, not from greed, from anxiety. What the data shows about the people who keep paying that cost: 77% regret it, 27% are in debt because of it, and more than a third, are no longer even in contact with the person they were originally trying to impress. Real money, real debt, real financial damage for a relationship that no longer exists. The math on that is genuinely difficult to look at directly. Now let's talk about what actually changes when you stop. Not the version the motivational channels sell, where you stop buying coffee and somehow retire at 40. Not the oversimplified math that pretends the only variable is discipline. The actual, mechanical, concrete shift that happens when you remove an audience from your spending decisions. The first thing that changes: your decisions get cheaper. Not because your life gets worse, not because you start depriving yourself of things that matter, but because a significant portion of what you were spending was never actually for you. It was overhead. The car that was slightly more than you needed because slightly less felt like a visible step down. The apartment in the neighborhood that announced something. The wardrobe calibrated not to how you feel in it, but to how it reads. The restaurant that's genuinely excellent but also genuinely photographable. That entire category. What the performance budget, it shrinks when the show ends. And it's larger than most people realize until they actually look at it clearly. The second change takes longer, but it's the one that reshapes everything. Your margin starts to appear. Margin is the distance between what comes in and what your life actually requires to maintain. Most people have almost none, and the reason isn't usually income. It's that every raise, every promotion, every improvement in earnings gets absorbed almost immediately by a lifestyle that was already calibrated to consume everything available. The performance requires a certain stage, and the stage upgrades with the budget. When you stop spending for an audience, that pattern breaks. The raises stop disappearing. The margin opens, slowly at first, then with real momentum. And what lives in that margin is the thing most people are actually chasing when they imagine financial success. Options. The option to leave something that stopped working without it becoming a crisis. The option to take a risk on something you actually believe in. The option to say no to things that don't serve you without needing to calculate whether you can afford to. The option to wait. To be genuinely patient in a world that pressures constant urgency because you're not running out of time every month. That's what financial freedom means in practice. Not a number, not a retirement date. The daily operational experience of making decisions from a position of choice rather than necessity. There's something else that shifts, and it's harder to quantify but probably more important in the long run. Your identity starts to detach from your spending. Most people, without realizing it, have built a significant portion of their self-concept around what they consume, the brands they associate with, the experiences they can reference, the level at which they appear to operate. Strip that away, or more accurately, stop feeding it, and there's a moment of genuine discomfort, a kind of quiet that feels unfamiliar. And then, for most people, something interesting happens in that quiet. They start to figure out what they actually value, not what signals value, not what registers as valuable to a room full of people trying to manage their own impressions. What genuinely, specifically makes their own life better, and what has been consuming real resources without returning anything proportional. That clarity is worth more than almost anything money can buy, because once you have it, every financial decision that follows is cleaner, faster, less expensive, less regretted. One last thing, and this one rarely gets said directly. The people in your life who actually matter, they were never keeping score the way you imagined. Not really. They weren't cataloging the car, noting the watch, evaluating the neighborhood, the scoreboard running in your head, the one that required constant tending and constant spending to stay ahead on. That scoreboard was largely a private construction, maintained by you, scored by you, funded entirely by you. The audience you were performing for was never as large, or as attentive, or as influential as it felt. But the price of the ticket was completely real, and the day you stop buying it is not a retreat. It's not settling. It's not giving up on wanting good things for your life. It's the moment the money you earn finally starts working for you, instead of working for a version of you that never needed to exist in the first place. That's not a small shift. For a lot of people, it's the only shift that ever actually mattered.